Good Easter Sunday evening, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to the Southern Oregon Weather Weekend Update. We'll start with our short-term forecast and talk about whether this spring weather is going to last through the end of the week. Then we'll talk about some mid-range forecast ideas and then end by giving you a look at some spring climate trends for Oregon over the last several decades. How have April temperatures and precipitation trends changed over the past half century? So first, our satellite image from NOAA shows pretty clear skies over our area, but you can see some high clouds developing. And that's largely a result of this upper level trough that's brushing us as it passes by to the north and east. You can see we have ridging in the Gulf of Alaska. We're under this cool north to northwest flow, and that's going to lead to some lower overnight temperatures, especially tonight and tomorrow. This is largely also because we're currently in MJO Phase 1. We were in Phase 8 yesterday, but today's the 12th. We're in Phase 1, and you can see the signal for ridging over the west coast of Canada, troughing somewhere in the east. It's very similar to what we're observing right now, although this pattern is displaced just a little bit to the west of the MJO correlation here. But it always amazes me how close these correlations match up with the observed weather patterns over our area. So the MJO is really a powerful driver for weather. Not all the time. Sometimes it can get buried in some other signals, but a lot of the times it's a pretty big factor if it moves into these active phases for weather in our area. We also have the PNA currently quite negative. And that may be somewhat counterintuitive because during the winter months, a negative PNA usually means troughing and storminess over the west coast and southern Oregon. But actually, as we move into the springtime, here's the correlation in April for a negative PNA, and you can see the troughing moving into the central U.S. while a ridge builds offshore. That's exactly the kind of pattern that we are seeing right now and that we're going to see over the next week. So where do we move after that? Well, you can see this ridging is forecast to move just a little bit closer to the coast, more in line with that MJO Phase 1 signal that I showed you just a few slides ago. Here you can see the cool overnight temperatures we're going to see tonight and tomorrow. It's as a result of this northwest flow that's going to lead to some cooler temperatures, but then warming back up overnight into the mid-40s according to the Weather Channel as we move through the week, and some warm daytime temperatures toward the end of the week. This ridge really starting to contribute to some unseasonable warmth. Usually our highs are in the mid-60s for Medford during this time of year, but here we're supposed to be more than 10 degrees above average, so that will certainly be some very nice spring weather this week. So after that, it looks like the MJO is forecast to progress into Phase 2 and then Phase 3. Phase 2, it looks like the MJO will be there in about 8 to 10 days, and Phase 3, the MJO should arrive there in days 10 to 12. Here's the correlation for Phase 2, and I want you to notice this ridging is still here, but see how this trough starts to lean back toward the west coast a little bit? That becomes more pronounced actually in Phase 3. We have a signal for some modest troughing much nearer to our area. Still most of the troughing heading into the Great Lakes and New England, but still a signal for some troughing somewhere along the west coast or in the southwest. That's remarkably similar to what the GEFS ensemble is calling for in about 12 days. See the signal for troughing? This ridge moves just a little bit further offshore, allowing some kind of troughing and storminess to sneak in, probably mostly south of Oregon into California, but we could start to see some showers move up from the southwest as a result of this as well. In fact, the deterministic models, both the GFS and the GEM, the Canadian model, show rain arriving as early as April 21st, April 20th to April 21st. So that's about 8 days out, 9 days out. Will it happen as soon as that? I'm not quite sure at this point, but there are some good indications that after we enjoy some uninterrupted sunniness and warmth this week, that we could start to see a few showers as we move later into the month. Here is the GEPS ensemble, the Canadian ensemble, almost at the very limit of its range toward the end of the month, and you can see the signal for troughing over our area becomes even stronger. And this once again lines up with the PNA. The PNA graph that I showed you a few slides ago shows the index steadily rising until it becomes positive toward the end of the month, and here is the correlation for a positive PNA. You see the troughing off the west coast and ridging developing over the lakes, and you can kind of see a similar pattern for the Canadian ensemble here. US ensemble has a similar idea. So all that to say, we could see some cooler and wetter conditions return toward the end of the month. To end today, I wanted to give you a quick perspective on how precipitation trends and temperature trends have changed over the past several decades in Oregon for the month of April. So here is April precipitation in Oregon, and you can see over the last century we've been steadily getting a little bit wetter and a little bit wetter, and I think that's largely what we would expect. As ocean temperatures warm, there's more evaporation, more precipitation. There's just more water being exchanged between the oceans and the atmosphere. So that's consistent with warming temperatures and slowly increasing global temperatures for our area. Also, if we take a look at temperature, we see a less consistent signal. We see increasing temperatures during the 40s and 50s, slight dip during the 70s, then up again during the 90s, then some slight cooling until about 2010, and then a recent uptick in temperatures for the month of April on average in Oregon. There goes my smoke alarm. That's as a result of some Easter dinner in the oven. We'll put this on pause until the alarm ends. Okay, the alarm situation was taken care of. Basically what I wanted to show you is that there's a rough correlation, general correlation between average temperatures statewide during the month of April and sea surface temperatures in the PDO region. So the Gulf of Alaska extending down along the west coast. And this really shows the influence that the Pacific Ocean has over weather, and in particular, in this case, springtime weather in Oregon. You can see there was a rise in sea surface temperatures in the 60s. That roughly correlates with some above average April temperatures during that time period across the state. And then see this dip in the 70s? That correlates pretty well with the dip in temperature that we see in the 70s, followed by steady rise in ocean temperatures through the 90s. That once again correlates well with the rise in air temperatures over the state. And then we see some cooling until about 2010. Once again, we see the correlation here followed by some warming temperatures, which also correlates well with what we observe offshore in the Pacific Ocean, in the Gulf of Alaska. So the Pacific Ocean, that PDO region, is a pretty significant driver for decadal climate trends, in particular for temperature over Oregon. So here you can see the current PDO region and the temperatures that we're observing. These are departures from normal, so blue colors are cooler than average by a couple degrees Celsius. This has recently flipped from warmer than normal, which is what we've observed for a couple of the past 5 years, to cooler than normal just in the past few months. This has been a transition that we've really seen just happen this winter. And you can see so far for the month of April, we've seen some below average temperatures across the state. So the correlation is holding. It's proving true for this year as well as past years. Are we going to finish the month below average? That remains to be seen, because we will see some warm temperatures this week. It depends on if we can end the month on that cooler note that the data is suggesting we might. So to recap, we're warm and dry through the week, and we'll see some significantly above average temperatures toward the end of the week. But tonight and tomorrow night we'll have those cooler overnight temperatures because of the northwest flow we're experiencing. We do have the MJO moving into phase 3 in about 10 days, 12 days, and that increases chances for precipitation during week 2. And again, some of those models bring some showers into our area as soon as April 21st, just about 8 or 9 days out. We do also have the PNA index rising, which suggests that some troughing could develop offshore later in the month, favoring that cooler and wetter end to April. And we've also seen how, in general, April temperatures do often coincide with temperature anomalies in the Pacific Ocean, in the Gulf of Alaska, and right off of the Oregon coast. We have seen that correlation play out so far this year, and we'll just have to watch for the rest of the month to see if we can finish April below average for temperature. So, thanks so much for listening. Thanks for bearing with me through the smoke alarm. Don't forget to set your notifications to receive the midweek update. I promise you it won't ding as loudly as the smoke alarm just did. But leave a comment if you have enjoyed this kind of unusual and exciting Easter forecast.